Evening. Ready? So it is 6 o'clock, so I'm going to call the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Tuesday, January 28th mission meeting to order. Randy or Rachel, you got roll call? Noted that Colleen is absent and excused. The Pledge of Allegiance, what?
And Mike is absent as well.
Thank you. So Pledge of Allegiance. Mark, can I ask you to lead us? To the flag, United States of America, to the republic, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So item number 3 is approval of the minutes. There was 2 minutes in our packet. Is there a motion or discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Is that one or both of them?
Both of them.
Second both.
Thank you. Thank you, Shannon and Jean. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Appearances before the commission is item number 4. Is there anybody wishing to appear? I don't have any notifications myself.
I don't have anybody registered, no.
Thank you. So next item is 5.1. Discussion and action on a resolution approving the final development plan for the Riverstone Phase 2 Townhome Development on 1.78 acres within the Conservancy Place Plan Unit Development between Windsor Road and Bellflower Drive. Is there any staff wishing to open the discussion?
I can do that. This is essentially going to be the western phase of the Riverstone Townhomes that the commission approved in 2024. This would add an additional 15 condominium units to that development, extending west to River Road at its northeast intersection with Windsor Road. The proposed layout is an extension of what was approved. The units and buildings would be similar in design with some built-in variety to what was approved in 2024. What you're being asked today to do is to approve a final development plan for construction. And there's a resolution in front of you, 2025-901, that would allow you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Any discussion? Or like Mark mentioned, there is a resolution in front of us. Be looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve. Oops, I lost the numbers here. 2025-01 is written.
So I've got a motion to accept the resolution as written, 2025-901.
I'll second.
Seconded by Shannon, motion by Jean. Any discussion? I've got one thing I want to bring up to Brian for consideration. Mainly that, or I guess maybe it's a bit of a question for Mark. Is there room to modify the landscaping plan within the resolution? I'm assuming so.
Can I take a look at the resolution language, or I can? Yeah, sure. I mean, we have some modifications, suggested ways that the landscape plan could be modified. If you have an additional one, Jim, we could certainly add it.
I think it's a lot to Brian's preference. I just know that that lot has a very nice view of the athletic complex and sunset, so I personally was hoping to see something directed towards that, maybe like Adirondack chairs or a gazebo or something where somebody could sit out and enjoy that scenery. So I don't want to make that a condition, but I hope that Brian takes that under consideration.
Jim,
Yep.
I'll speak. The thing that I think that the western rear view of a 4-unit, a 3-unit, will be looking at the park. And the only thing that concerned me a little bit was the headlights that will be coming over the interstate on Windsor Road. So I wanted to put a berm, keep it out of the vision triangle there, obviously, but and with some plantings. But I don't want to obstruct the view. I just want to make it feel like it's not, going to be targeted with headlights, coming from the west going east.
Yep, I can agree. There's a lot of competing factors involved. So again, that's why I don't want to really make it a condition, but anything else? Is there something going on, Brandy, or?
It's just we're having a hard time loading. So we may file a score system to pull up documents, just
Okay, thank you. Lisa, did you hear that too, or?
Yeah, no, Brandy, I was wondering if you could speak it up a little bit or because online you can't really, like, we couldn't
I
really
think
hear
your
anything. she said.
microphone was just off.
I didn't have my microphone on, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Um,
Could you
I-
repeat that, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I was just saying that this packet is so large that we are having some issues with it loading in real time. So just be patient as we try to pull things up from our other files.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
You see those angles right there on the plan there. There's a vision triangle there for the corners that, we have to be really conscious about for traffic going around the corners. And that's the only thing that we have to be, very cautious about. But, putting buildings back there, Jim, I don't know, but putting a sitting area back there, I would be totally fine with.
I think it'd be a nice amenity, but again, that's up to you and the marketability of it and cost, so. Thank you for considering, Brian.
Yep, no problem at all.
Any other comments, discussion? So there's a motion on the floor to approve as written. And seeing no comments or discussion, I'll ask that everybody in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it looks like it's a continuation, I'll say, discussion and recommendation on a preliminary and final plat for the Riverstone Phase 2 plat between Windsor Road and Bellflower Drive and Conservancy Place. Anything with that? Mark?
Briefly, like Brian's other plats, in order to facilitate financing for his customers, he is asking to put each of the buildings on a separate lot. And this subdivision plat would do that for the Riverstone 2 development. We're recommending that you all recommend village board approval of that preliminary and final plat submitted together, subject to the 3 conditions that are on screen right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So I open up the floor to discussion or a motion. And again, staff recommendations are on screen.
I'll make a motion to do the recommendation to the village board. Just what Mark said.
Yeah. Okay, motion by Gene. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I will take Doug, I think. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you and good luck, Brian.
Thank you, guys. Have a good evening. Thanks.
So item 5.3, discussion and action on a resolution approving the final development plan for the Springs at DeForest multifamily residential development on 22.3 acres within the northeastern part of a current parcel denoted on the agenda west of the interstate I-39, 9094, and north of Dalmore Drive. You, I'm assuming, Mark?
Thanks, Jim. I'll kick it off and talk about process, but I know the team has a presentation if you guys want to saunter up here to the table while I kind of frame what's being asked tonight. So the commission, I believe, has seen this proposal both in concept and with the preliminary development plan rezoning that was before you, and it hasn't really changed a whole lot. You'll hear more from them. This is the final approval step in the process called the final development plan. This is where all the details come out on building design, landscaping, engineering, and the various other features that are comprising this, fairly complex and large scale development. The final development plans approval starts and ends at the Planning and Zoning Commission here tonight. The team's going to explain a little bit more about the proposal, more of a reminder as to where they're at, and then we can have a further discussion after that. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. And I guess I open it up to you. If you could please state your name and address for the record, though.
My name is Dylan Sindrich. Address is West 134 North 8675 Executive Parkway, Menominee Falls, Wisconsin.
Katie Skelton, same address.
My name is Dylan Sindrich. I'm here representing Continental Properties. So again, we're here for your consideration of the final development plan for the Springs at DeForest project. I know you guys have a long meeting tonight, so I'll be brief with the presentation, but I just wanted to take a few minutes to reintroduce everyone to the project and talk about a few of the changes that have been made since the preliminary development plan and a few of the things that we have done with this project to incorporate your feedback of staff to hopefully make this a successful project for everyone involved. All good. Okay, so here's the just a refresher on the site location. So we're just to the northeast of the intersection of Interstate 94 and Highway 19. You can't see it on this aerial because it's out of date, but we're basically just kind of behind the Fleet Farm over there. You move on to the next slide. So here's the site plan that we included within the final development plan. It's largely the same as shown in the preliminary development plan, if you remember that. So this community it's 16 residential buildings with 20 units within each building. It's a mix of studio, 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units. There's going to be a total of 320 units. Parking for future residents is provided with a mix of attached and detached garages, as well as tandem spaces and surface parking. We do this to help provide a variety of types of parking for our residents to suit their needs and preferences. And then we're proposing 567 parking spaces, which is 23 more than the required 544 spaces per the village ordinance. We're doing this to provide additional space for move in, move out, like moving trucks, delivery vehicles, just to ensure that there's adequate parking for our residents, guests, and any other uses that we may need that parking for. And then community amenities are going to include community clubhouse with a large gathering room, pool with a sun deck, a grilling area, 24-hour fitness center, and 2 pet playgrounds, as this is a pet-friendly community. if you can move on to the, yeah. So just a couple of things that we wanted to highlight that we did to incorporate village feedback. So there were kind of two areas that we gleaned from the preliminary development plan process that were priorities for village staff and for you all. And that was public safety and then community design. So for public safety, we're incorporating two public road extensions, an extension of Tyranny Crossing on the west, and then a brand new road to the east, Glencoe Drive. We removed the gate and fence from the site, and then we added an additional east-west public access easement through the site. This is all going to help improve access for public safety personnel and first responders, as well as future residents, their guests, and just members of the general community. And then we also coordinated closely with the village police and fire department. We made sure that their vehicles could navigate the site, which included providing larger turn radii on specific curves within the development, and then coordination with the landscaping plans to ensure that landscaping wouldn't impede the fire department's ability to maneuver their vehicles or access any fire hydrants. And then as far as community design, I think a lot of this was talked about in the preliminary development plan, but just reiterating that we did incorporate this as part of these final plans, that we added additional masonry along the buildings fronting the public roads. So we increased the total percentage of decorative materials from 26% throughout the development to 35% on those public road facing building frontages. And then we also incorporated 4 color schemes within the development for the residential buildings to add architectural interest and visual variation within the development. I have some renderings just of the 4 buildings. So this is color scheme A, and then next one, B, C, and D. We're really hoping that this community can be something that, our future residents, members of the community can be proud of. And we're really grateful to the village for working with us, for your guys' time and consideration from you all, from village staff. I know a lot of people worked hard on this project, and so we're really grateful for that. We're really excited for all the great things happening here in DeForest, and we're excited to be a part of that. So thank you for your time, and Katie and I will be here to answer any questions that you guys have. Thanks.
Thank you, Dylan. Is there anybody wishing to question or discussion? Yes, one quick question I have sorry, now you removed the renderings. I guess I was curious, looks like there was a brick or a brick veneer on those buildings. Are those all similar, or those vary too?
As far as like the material for the brick, I believe they're all going to be the same material. And Katie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that a lot of the variation is going to be in the colors on the siding that you can kind of see if you scroll through these renderings. I think the masonry will be largely the same color.
Okay.
Dylan did mention that the buildings that have frontage on Tierney Crossing on the west, on Glencoe Drive on the east, and on this private street that's going to look a lot like a public street that connects the two, they have upgraded elevations. So there's more stone in particular on those elevations that the public will see than on some of the others. And I don't even think those are the
No.
4 that you showed.
Yeah, so like if you go to those renderings, I can kind of explain where the additional masonry is. So basically, if you see those areas where there's masonry and then it kind of stops like halfway, basically on the public road facing buildings, that's going to extend all the way to the top. And then on some of the areas where above some of the garages, there's also going to be masonry in those areas as well. So there's going to be a lot more masonry on those public road facing buildings.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, I see you have your hand up. Or
I
James?
I actually didn't even have a question. I just wanted to express some gratitude towards the staff and then is it Katie and Dylan as well? I think this is the third or fourth time that you folks have been in the room and at our board meetings. And every time you've been here, you've been very well prepared and very well articulated. And your layouts of your presentations have always been so thoughtful. It leaves very little for question. And so kudos to the board, and also gratitude to the team here, Dylan and Katie. Much appreciated. I just wanted to share that because I usually have questions, and I don't think I've asked too many about your projects, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Yes, I'd echo some of that sentiment too, as far as it's very well prepared plan. I know I'm pretty nitpicky, so I do have a couple nitpicky comments, but I want to give everybody else the opportunity for discussion. Okay. I'm not seeing anything, so I just will mention that I was looking at the grading plan and I see there's some slopes. It's hard for me to tell, say how steep the slopes are. I'm guessing there may be like a 4-to-1 slope, I don't know if you can pull that up quick enough, but we'll get there. And my concern is, say we had for instance, in the village, but it doesn't really matter if it existed previously, but I like how your buildings are pretty much like all wrapped with sidewalk, but there's some that are directly adjacent to, say, looks like maybe a 15-foot slope. And I just want to make sure that there's, say, enough of a buffer. If we want to even have like a decorative fence so people don't necessarily, a little kid doesn't ride their bike off the sidewalk, or I'm okay as long as you say you have maybe 2 foot of, say, 10-to-1 or 10% slope before you hit the 4-to-1 slope, if that makes sense. And I'm just wondering if you've taken that into account with your grading plan.
Yeah, I think, I'm assuming they're trying to pull it here, but I can talk to that a little bit. So I think part of that is going to be, the grading doesn't start right at the sidewalk. So like you said, there's going to be a buffer between the sidewalk and where that 4-to-1 slope starts, where there will be, some flat area. And then I think it's part of that's going to be with the landscaping plan. So we have sod in areas between the sidewalks and the building, but then in between in that sloped area, it's going to be more of like a no-mow, like more kind of prairie grasses that are going to be taller and not mowed, flat. So I think there's going to also be a sort of like a vegetation barrier between the sidewalk and that slope that will hopefully, address, keep kids from like running on it and trying to, ride their bike down the hill or whatever,
So Brandy, if I could tell you where I'm looking. No, I would say go up to the grading plan that you had on screen and like zoom in on the building 16. Say like between 16 and 1. I don't know where the contours went. There. Okay. So I'm looking at that slope and I didn't know if it was a 4-to-1 or a 3-to-1. And looking how it looks like it goes pretty much from the walk down to the curb and gutter. And normally I would, as far as to me, a better engineering design is I have a little bit of a flat area before the slope. And again, down by the curb and gutter of the parking lot, it'd be nice to have a bit of a flat area. So just bring it up as my opinion. I'd rather have a steeper slope with those, say, benches rather than a slope that's, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and I definitely appreciate that. I mean, we certainly want this to be like a safe community. With this site, as you guys know, we are facing like some pretty significant topography, which is why we did have to, have this grade break basically in the middle of the site. So, we'll certainly do our best to mitigate that concern, but I think as well, just with some of the grading challenges we face, I think that's why we had to push the grading as close to the edges of the buildings as we could. But I think with the differentiation in the types of vegetation on the landscaping plans in those areas, I'm hopeful that it will be able to mitigate those concerns as much as possible.
Mhm. That's appreciated, and I
Jim,
guess maybe a
I'm sorry.
question for you, Mark, is this is the approval of the FDP, so this in fact is our, pretty much our site plan review too.
It is. And I'll mention that we do have the village engineer, Craig Matthews, online to answer any engineering related questions that are directed, the village's way. And I would surmise that question of whether, there can just be even a couple feet beyond the walkways and beyond the pavement would be a detail that could be worked out on refinements to the engineering plan or almost even post-engineering in the field. But he can comment more on that if he needs to, or any other questions that you guys have that are engineering focused.
And I can just think of some other site plans where you were concerned about that and where we put, say, split rail fence just as more of a visual barrier, not necessarily that it would stop anybody from falling, but at least have that visual aesthetics or whatever. I guess, Craig, do you want to comment on that? Was that in your purview or did you already comment on something like that?
Hopefully you can hear me.
Yep.
We did not have a comment on that specific item, Jim. I got maybe a little better zoomed in view of it here, and you'll see the areas that you're talking about. So I would say that some areas appear to have a bit of a flat spot, other areas maybe not. The one thing we did ask for as part of the review is just to label the slopes that are in there. It does get pretty challenging to determine that in this type of scale, but very much willing to review that as we go through the addressing of the engineering comments here and make sure that there is a few feet buffer there between those slopes.
Okay, thank you, Craig.
One thing I can add too is we did have a external party, an ADA consultant review the maneuverability from an ADA perspective around the site to confirm that we're meeting all of those standards and requirements. So that's why you do see some bump outs for sidewalks and things like that. So, we can also upgrade any signage if needed to indicate those ADA routes if there's any concern in those areas.
Okay. Thank you very much. And along those lines, and this is going to be sort of my last comment, but it's sort of a multi-tier thing where I'm trying not, I think your site plan again is very good. But what I'm trying to look at is even though it's a private road, it's also a dedicated easement. So I'm trying to only look at that rather than necessarily the rest of the whole plan.
Yeah.
Yep. And with that concern, I'm looking north of building number 5. Yep, there's the ADA ramp, but it doesn't actually line up with the ramp on the north side of that private drive. I can see it's very challenging, but you might want to try to get that more aligned.
Yeah,
And then the other next location I have is building number 4. So there is, I see there's the dog park that's north of building number 4. And I guess a request that I would have is to connect a sidewalk from building 4 to have a crosswalk to that dog park. I'm suspect it would actually be more to the left rather than the center of the building. Might be easier. You see what I'm getting at? It just feels like you got
Yeah.
a sidewalk running north and south of that private drive. It'd be nice to have one crossing in mid-block.
Yeah, we can certainly talk with our engineer and, kind of get them to look at the grades in that area and make sure we can make that work from an ADA perspective. But I mean, that makes sense to me.
And the other one that I'll mention is, I know it's quite a bit more challenging and it's outside of this private drive, so that's why I don't really want to say it's a condition. But say, can you scroll up to building 1? And it just seems like there's a lot of homes, or I'll say density, more or less, would it be northeast of building 16, that's going to want to go to the pool. And right now, they're all gonna have to go down to that private drive. And I think it'd be pretty awesome if you could somehow connect like building 16 sidewalk or the building 15 sidewalk somehow to get down to building 1. I just suspect that there's gonna be a footpath made there if that isn't done, but so it'll leave you, that I think is probably more your discretion than anything we can comment on.
Yeah, I mean, I see the point, for sure. Again, I think without being, looking at those grades just from an engineering perspective, like how we would actually design a path, I can't exactly speak to, how we would do that, but we can certainly talk to our engineer and see how, what they would propose as far as a route between those areas.
Right, and that would, I gotta believe it's gonna be really hard to get anything ADA compliant, but is this a matter if you wanna do stairs or not, so.
Yeah, that's the thing we'll have to talk to our operations team with too, to make sure that there's a safety feature involved with that, because it is a steep grade. So we'll just want to make sure that if we can put some sort of walking trail, maybe it is just a mode walking trail that can zigzag back and forth, but not something that's a paved ADA trail, so that there's no concern with ADA going down that slope.
Yep, makes a lot of sense. And say to continue that same pathway, it might be good to have a connection between building 1 and the pool area rather than the only connection being up by the parking lot. I guess I don't know exactly how it's gonna function. On the north side of the pool, there's that sidewalk. Or sorry, the north side of building 1.
Is the only intended access to the pool through the clubhouse, or do you have a second access directly from the outside of the fence into the pool area?
There's an access from the outside of the pool area, but now that I'm looking at the plan, I think either way, they would probably have to go around towards the clubhouse entrance, because it is, a gated pool area, so that people can't just get in there without secured access or a fob. So I'm not sure. That might just drop them off at the backside, and then they have to walk around anyways.
Yep.
We have like restrooms with kind of like a changing area as well. So I think a lot of people just kind of prefer to go through the clubhouse anyway, because, if they have kids, they can just get them in and out of their suits there and not have to, walk them back all wet to their house. So I think generally people just prefer to go through the clubhouse, but we can certainly look at that.
Okay. That was all my comments, so thank you for entertaining those. Any other discussion? So I think we have a resolution. Do we have that on screen, or we didn't have a motion yet, did we?
It is Resolution 2025-902. This would approve the final development plan. There are some minor conditions associated with the approval that are included. Most of them just refer to the multivarious documents that are part of the final development plan. Things that need to be done before a building permit are issued. Some reference to the village engineer letter that was attached and the items that are included in that letter. And then other things related to lighting and public safety, which was mentioned a few times. It remains an issue that we're continuing to hone and resolve as this moves forward. Jim, if you wanted to add one or more of your comments or as conditions, it would probably be appropriate to add them to number 3. But I'm happy to answer questions on the resolution or go through any of these items in more detail.
I guess that'll be up to the person making the motion, but I guess I would request that maybe we add a condition to the item 3, allow for the engineer to look at say the grades along sidewalks and potential crossings.
Of the private road.
Is there anybody willing to make a motion? Yep, I think I'm gonna make the motion, so can you scroll up to what was it? So I will make a motion. And this is for our approval, correct?
Correct.
Yep, approving. With the Planning and Zoning Commission Resolution 2025-902 for the approving of this plan unit development as written. And I had also asked that we add an additional condition to item number 3 that allows for modifications through the, I'll say, approval or direction of the village engineer with the grading plan to look at the, say, buffering the sidewalks and curb and gutter locations, and also to allow for crosswalks on the east-west collector or east-west road. That is my motion. Is there a second? And a second by Justin. Any further discussion? I see a hand up. I'm assuming you want to talk,
I was-
Lisa? or-
I was gonna second your motion.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right.
Thank you. And I do not see any continued discussion. So if everybody's in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. And that, I think, is it, correct? Or am I missing one? Oh, yep, I checked it too quickly. 5.4 is discussion and recommendation on a certified survey map dividing into 4 lots, 2 outlots, and a public road right of way. The 45.1 acre parcel denoted on the agenda west of the Interstate 399094 and north of Dalmore Drive.
This is would be a recommendation to the village board to approve this certified survey map to divide the land as you see on your screens right now. The Springs at DeForest project that you've just spoken about is on lot 3. The rest of the certified survey map would divide up the current 45 acre parcel into 3 additional lots, 1, 2, and 4, which are zoned commercial and available for commercial development, and would in fact be opened up or more broadly opened up for development with the Springs proposal. And then 2 outlots on the west side of Tierney Crossing, that would be for stormwater management. Outlot 1 would be the main outlot serving the Springs project. Outlot 2 would serve the added impervious surface from Tierney Crossing, and both outlots would serve future development on lot 2 and 1 and 4 as well, to a degree. So Tierney Crossing extended, also dedicated with this certified survey map, and that what's called Street A would also be dedicated. That will be changed to Glencoe Drive. We have a recommendation. It's in the memo. The recommendation again ties to the village engineer's report. We had a number of technical comments on the certified survey map that are in the engineer's report. Those would be addressed with a revised certified survey map. This project will require an infrastructure development agreement to be approved by the village board along with the certified survey map. And those are the 2 main conditions that you see up and on your screen right now.
Thank you, Mark. So any discussion, or we're also could get a motion? So,
I'll make a motion,
thank you.
recommending that village board approval of the associated CSM, subject to conditions 1, 2, and 3.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Justin, seconded by Shannon. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night. So item 5.5 is public hearing on an application for a conditional use permit to allow an indoor recreational volleyball facility on a parcel denoted on the agenda, Dentel Road, southwest of Interstate 3990-94. I will open that public hearing at 6:40.
And I can maybe frame the proposal again, and I know we've had representatives from Zone 1 here today that we talked about a lot of things, but not how tonight's meeting might go. So you're welcome to come up to the table as well and present your item during the public hearing, and then we can hear whatever other comments we might have. So this proposal would land indoor volleyball recreational facility in the western 34,000 square feet of the Madison, I think what's called the Madison Logistics Park, and otherwise known as the Likewise development off of Dental Road. That project had been before the commission on multiple occasions over the past couple of years. The building's about 138,000 square feet. This would occupy a little less than a third of that on the west end of it. The project as an indoor recreational facility requires a conditional use permit before it could occupy the space. That's why they're here tonight to request that conditional use permit. If the permit is approved, there are some relatively minor site and building changes that would go along with it. And so there would be a minor site plan submittal that would be prepared and reviewed following the conditional use permit. But what I'd like to do is ask the applicants to kind of just let us know who they are and explain their proposal so we can move on through the public hearing. Thank you.
Yep, and please state your name and address as minimum.
I'm Annie Lyles. Our business address is 709 Deladonna Way, Madison 53704.
Tracy Krzycki, that's the business address, and that's also my residential address at this time.
Thank you.
So our project is, we're looking to open an indoor sports facility, specifically volleyball. We have about 35 plus years of combined experience in running a facility. We work together at a facility called Kiva Sports Center in Middleton. I've been a lifelong volleyball player, and I'm not sure how many of you guys are in the volleyball scene, but this is a big sport that's on the rise, and we felt that it would be a perfect sport for us to open a facility centered on. And we felt like the DeForest Windsor area would be a great area for us to open a facility because it is lacking currently. The types of activities that we would be offering would be leagues for both adults and youths. So that would be weekly games where you would meet and have a referee and compete within your skill level. Instructional classes and camps or clinics where we would be teaching primarily youth, although there would be adult options as well. And also rentals. Those would be our three primary offerings. There would be other minor offerings, things like a small food and beverage selection, small events, things that we call single day series where they're not tournaments like you would normally imagine tournaments, but they'd be smaller things like Mad Hatters where it's maybe a few maybe up to 12 teams that would be playing, and they wouldn't be these large youth programs that most people think of. We are looking to open on 4410 Dantle Road. We felt like that would be a great building for us to establish ourselves in. The industrial type buildings couple very well with sports facilities, with their higher ceilings and with their large spaces that are adequate for sports play. Like I said, opening in the DeForest Windsor area is an ideal location for us because of the demographic and the demographic in the area, the wealth levels, and the growth that is expected to happen in this area.
Thank you. Any questions? I'll say with the public hearing, or we can close the public hearing. We can move to discussion and ask questions then too.
Yeah, I don't know. I know there's the owner, one of the owners of the buildings is online, and I don't know if there are other people here to speak at the hearing.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
You may want to retreat for a moment so other people can come.
yep. If there's anybody else wishing to speak at the public hearing, if you're online, if you could please raise your hand so we can unmute you. And it looks like there was at least one individual wishing to speak. Could you come up to the microphone, and I'll ask you to state your name and address for the record. And there will be some paperwork to fill out when you're done.
Okay.
Just one sheet, pretty quick.
I'm
but-
David Hanskin, address 4349 Dental Road. Excuse my decor here, I just came from reffing and came straight from reffing, so.
You're not a zebra?
My concern with this project is increased traffic. I live in a house right on the hill, just up from there, less than a quarter mile from it. And there's already a semi business there that got approved. And at the time, they were supposed to be restricted to just 10 trucks, and they're way over that. The semis are going back and forth constantly. My house shakes. And I live in the country. I have a dog that I leave loose, and that's supposed to be country life. Well, now this big building is being built down there. I've already quit walking. That used to be a great place to walk my dog down the dead end road. Don't do that anymore. I used to go daily walks because the semis roaring back constantly. So that's already out the window. I have to drive to the dog park to take my dog for a walk. Well, still worried about my dog getting run over or something. That road needs to be redone. It's because all the increased traffic, they're going to be putting in a new bridge there because all this new increased traffic. And so it's going to really hamper us getting in and out when they put in this new bridge and stuff. You guys are probably aware of all that. But my concern with switching, having a volleyball business is I've played volleyball. I've been in, leagues are usually on the hour. So like if you have a normal business down there, the traffic will come in the morning when they come to work and leave at the end of the night when they're done, and maybe a little over lunch hour. Well, volleyball facility tournaments, every hour, there's going to be people coming in, a whole slew of people coming in on the hour and leaving on the hour for volleyball games. So that's greatly going to increase the traffic there. And it's already way too much for a dead end road in the country. So that's my concern.
Thank you, David. Any questions for David from the commission? Thank you very much, and we'll work through this. Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience wishing to speak? Seeing none? And online, was there anybody? Okay. Thank you. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to close the public hearing. It is 6:49. And we are going to move to item 5.6, which is discussion and action on a resolution approving additional use permit for an indoor recreational volleyball facility on a parcel denoted on the agenda, Dentel Road, southwest of Interstate 399094. So, any discussion?
You want the site, they want the site plan.
So Lisa, for your information, Shannon asked to see a site plan, so Brandy is pulling that up. Anything else, Shannon? I'd say the floor is yours. Okay. So Lisa, you had your hand up. I'll give you the floor for now while we're pulling things
Yeah.
up.
I had the same question as Shannon on that, if we could review the site plan together. That was one question, since that's underway. My second question is, are the owners, Tracy and Annie, looking for any financial incentives for their business? My third question is, I think this location is zoned industrial right now, so commercial, if I'm mistaken, please tell me, that would be an upgrade, is that correct?
Let me take them in maybe in reverse order. This
Sure thing.
this site is zoned M2 industrial, and within that zoning district, indoor recreational facilities are allowed by conditional use permit. And we do have a few others in industrial zone land in the village. So it does not have to be rezoned, but this conditional use permit is sort of, if you want to call it that, a special approval. And one of the things that, we look at would be how compatible is this in an industrial setting where, not to make our previous speaker even more nervous, but we probably will see 3 or 4 other industrial buildings to the north of this one in the future. There has been, Alex can correct me if I'm wrong, but there has been no request and there is no financial incentives from the village available for this project or site.
Yeah, that's correct.
And then the third question related to, I think both Shannon and Lisa concerned is parking. The proposal has I think both a supply and a demand a solution for parking. On the supply side, you see that they have, the owner has allocated 29 stalls in front of the building that would be dedicated to the facility, and they are together proposing an additional, I think it's 35 or 36 stalls. I'm sure I'm getting that number wrong, behind the building that would mainly be intended for overflow situations. And then there's of course additional parking in the front lot, but we can't necessarily count on those spaces, particularly during weekday hours when the rest of the building will need it for, whatever uses land within the remaining 100,000 plus square feet. On the demand side, I think it's important is that their proposal, as they're offering it, is not that this is a tournament facility. Related to that, they're offering, and the conditional use permit would require a maximum occupancy of 260 people. For our zoning ordinance regulations, that translates into 1 car for every 4 capacity, or about 65 spaces. The other thing that we can say on the demand side of things that they have offered and are included in their operational plan, and that relates to a prior comment, is staggering start times of games as opposed to having them all start at the top of the hour. And, that type of situation leads to everyone from the prior game there at the same time everyone from the next game, is there throughout the whole facility. And they can speak more to that. And then the other kind of demand side opportunity, I suppose, that's created here is that the proposed peak hours of the volleyball facility are opposite the peak hours of most industrial, first shift industrial users. So I suspect, though we shouldn't count on this, but I suspect that the reality of the situation is that a lot more than 29 stalls will be in the front, would be available for people using the volleyball facility on a Friday night at 8 o'clock, for instance, when others in the building would be at home. So, you know, just to close that, you know, our concerns are similar to what, you know, has been raised. Well, let me start with the positives. We think this is a great facility for DeForest. And there is definitely a demand, and these folks know what they're doing. They've demonstrated that to us over the last several weeks. Our concerns, this is public safety, public works, planning and zoning, are related to parking and making sure that this doesn't evolve into a tournament facility. If you've been there yourself or had kids in, whether it's volleyball or dance or pick your sport, tournaments are, I'll just say they're nuts for parking, and people will park everywhere and anywhere and well beyond the limits of what might be established in advance. So, you know, that initially was the concern, you know, was with respect to, you know, keeping the lid on that in this location. You know, the second concern, which is a tougher nut to crack, is the location and access to the location. It's at the end of a 1 mile plus dead end street. We have a long range plan to provide a second way in and out, and the owner is contributing to that plan through the construction of Pedrelli Road, which extends north from Dental Road. But we're a ways away from getting an overpass in this area to get a second way in and out. So, you know, the secondary concerns that are harder to address is public access, customer access, and protective services access, particularly in the case of an emergency. So, you know, public safety have been involved in the review of this proposal, have offered some suggestions. Many of those appear in the plans that they've already submitted or the conditions. But those are certainly issues that are harder to address. Now, the counter argument is that, you know, the village has already approved 500,000 square feet of industrial space out here. So there will be more people, there will be more cars, there will be employees. And so, you know, the real question is what difference is created by a recreational facility instead of a manufacturing facility here, and how can that be addressed? I'm going to get into the resolution later, and there's been some back and forth on that would approve the conditional use permit. We are recommending approval, but we are recommending approval with a what I call a show me period to demonstrate that this does work, with the idea that between a year and 18 months after opening, they'd come back before the commission. We'd kind of review what did work, what didn't work, what conditions proved to be unnecessary and maybe unnecessarily burdensome, and what additional things might be necessary to make this work in this location. I've gone way beyond answering the questions that were asked, but I just wanted to have a chance to kind of overview where we've been at with the team on and where our recommendation is on the proposal. Thank you.
Yes, could I ask you, Lisa? I know you asked 3 questions. I kept track of 2. Did Mark get all 3?
Commercial is an improvement over industrial. I don't know if that was clearly answered, that part of it, but so that's an open one. And I'd just like to thank Mark real quick, because it's like he's been working with me for 2 years and anticipated my transportation infrastructure question. So thank you, Mark. But yeah, so I think the commercial as an improvement over industrial, and I did have one more I'd like to ask after that one.
So we might be talking past each other a little bit on this, but there are commercial uses that are allowed within industrial zoning districts.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
And one of them is indoor recreational facilities. Another example that comes up are hotels that are allowed in. Yeah.
You did mention that. I'm sorry.
That's okay, Lisa.
The last one was, that I had was, I think this location, I think I've driven past it a couple of times, but I believe that there's, potentially some other businesses in there presently. And if so, have they been contacted for endorsement of this project or had a chance to like review, a potential proposal?
The owner is, building owner is here, but to my knowledge, there are no other tenants of this building.
Okay.
They would be the
Gotcha.
first tenant.
Okay, I thought I'd seen like vehicles parked in that facility before, but I guess I'm mistaken. So, so nothing over there then where we need to be mindful of neighbors besides the residential impact potentially, but it's already approved for industrial. So
That it
got
is.
it. And my questions, that answers my questions for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. Mark, if I could put you on the spot, because we talked about traffic, and I wonder if you could also elaborate as far as parking, because I believe the village just made a no parking area out on Dental Road, and I don't think that's been mentioned yet.
That's correct. So I'm sure it would have happened anyway, but this proposal accelerated the village's interest in seeing no parking along all parts of Dental Road that are in the village, which is most of what Brandy's tracing here. The roads, it is narrow. It does not have curb and gutter. Parking alongside it would represent a hazard for access for a variety of vehicles. So the village board last week enacted an ordinance to make it all a no parking zone.
Thank you. Any discussion, questions?
Yes.
I will mention that we took some things a little bit out of order. We normally don't take questions from the audience at this time, but it was brought up. Say, Lisa, I don't know if you were able to hear that there has been people that park there to utilize properties for hunting. And it was asked what would happen to those individuals, and I would suggest that they won't be able to park there anymore. So if they park there, they'll be potentially getting a ticket, so they have to find a new location to park.
You can't see it on this image, but there is a segment of Pedrelli Road that extends into north of Dental Road, and that would have on-street parking.
Good point.
Still.
So the new road that was built going north would allow parking, so
Correct.
somebody hunting could park there or whatever purpose that they're coming there for. Okay, thank you for the clarification, Mark. And the other thing that I wanted to mention that sort of speaks to what Lisa brought up as far as like the use, I can think of, it was a different location, but in an industrial building where many years ago, we approved a gymnastics studio to come in. And I'm assuming that was a conditional use permit because we had quite a bit of discussion about that. But in the end, we did approve it. So we have an example where we've done a similar thing. And I guess I hesitate to say this, but I feel like it was a pretty good example because they've done very well for themselves and now built a new building themselves. So I personally hope the same for you guys, and sorry if the building owner's here. I hope it's a temporary situation and you get to build your own building, but regardless, we do have an example where we've done a similar thing within our village boundaries. Any other discussion? Those are, I think, all the points I wanted to bring up.
We don't mean to cut the conversation short. We just want to make sure that we're ready.
Yep. Another comment to bring up, I'll say to you, Mark, rather than the applicant, is that you called it like a proving period of 18 months. And I'm a little bit concerned because I don't know the capital outlay for that. And if that's been discussed with the applicant and how you feel that appropriate.
This is as good a time as any to talk a little bit about that suggested condition. So it tends to straddle the page, of course, conveniently. So there's a suggested condition in your packet, and it's the one that kind of is crossed out at the bottom, and I'll summarize it for you. It basically says this conditional use permit's good for 18 months. You can come back before that 18-month period and get an extension or remove the limitation entirely. They can speak to this in more detail, but basically that didn't work with their financing. The bank, wasn't going to loan them money for I think a 10-year loan with an 18-month window. So they've asked for a change to that condition. Days are blurring. But today or yesterday, I worked on a suggested change that in summary says, no, the conditional use permit is not temporary, but we do want you to come back before the commission sometime after your first year of operation and before 18 months have passed as a kind of a review period to enable us to see, where our concerns about traffic and parking founded or unfounded, has access for police protection and others been an issue, or has it been a non-issue? And that's the essence of condition 7 as amended on your screens in front of you right now.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Is that the only change to the resolution than what we had in our packet?
No, there is one other suggested change. It's in condition number 1. So we had a conversation about operations and this afternoon with Annie and Tracy, and the proposed hours of operation in the operational plan, coupled with some of the other restrictions, like on staggering these start times, as they kind of thought about the totality of the limitations that they were volunteering, plus those that were being suggested for them. They had concerns about their hours of operation. So they have asked, and they can elaborate upon this, that the hours of operation, the maximum hours of operation be extended from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., which is what they are in the proposal in the packet, to 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. So that is the only other change in the resolution as written currently.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I guess the applicants can answer this, but I'm assuming that's just mainly so you can finish games without getting yourself in trouble and things.
Yes, the peak hours for our business would be between 6 and 10. And so if we have our staggered times plus an absolute deadline of 10, that would render about a half an hour every single night useless and unable to generate any kind of revenue for us. So those extended amounts of times would allow us to finish those games.
Thank you. Any other discussions, or we do have a proposed resolution in front of us? And this is our resolution, and this is not a recommendation.
That's correct.
Anybody willing to make a motion?
Not yet here. I'll make I'll make a motion for the resolution -903 as written with those conditions also.
Yep.
That you've identified out.
the conditions as proposed to us tonight.
As proposed.
Thank you, Jean. And Lisa, you have your hand up?
I'm not sure if this is the right time to discuss concern or how to modify Jean's.
I will second the motion, and then now it's the time, Lisa, to have those concerns discussed.
Perfect, thank you. I would actually recommend that we request that they go back to the core hours. There are residents in the area. So the originally proposed core hours not to exceed 10 p.m. I know that these facilities can have noise issues. And so I would be concerned with any type of nuisance issues for homeowners in any type of proximity to the location. So I would just request that we would be mindful and considerate of our neighbors in this situation and consider adhering to those originally proposed hours of operation.
Can I respond?
Yes, that's your motion.
Okay, and I heard what you said, Lisa, and I totally understand that. The piece that I'm kind of zoning in on is the word may, that the hours may be extended. To me, that doesn't necessarily mean that it will occur each and every time. But in order for the business to work within the parameters of what they have, then they have that flexibility that if, say, during one of the days that they couldn't get those teams out soon enough, and then they're not violating what we've written here. And that's, I totally understand what what your concern is. I'm going to kind of hang my hat on the word may.
Yeah, and honestly, I wouldn't hang my hat on the word may. I just wouldn't not do that because the hours of operation will therefore become set in stone at 11 p.m. And the potential disruptive to the residents, and I'll hang my hat on here, on the word may here, is it may be very disruptive. So I think like in protecting our current residents and being mindful of those people in that area, I think 11 p.m. is excessive for a child and family focused entertainment and fitness center. And I'm going to stress my concern there for our local residents there with no concern for nuisance, traffic, noise, etc. It may be disruptive.
And I just also offer to, I appreciate those concerns too, that any by right user in the rest of the building that doesn't have to come in for a conditional use permit could conceivably be operating, late night shifts as well in that facility and they would be within their rights to do that.
Yep. Thank you, Alex. That was a question I was thinking of. So Lisa, you expressed your concern. The maker of the motion is not willing to accept that as a friendly amendment. You have the right, or if you wish, you could ask to amend it yourself and look for a second.
Okay, thank you for that guidance, Jim. I appreciate it. Could you scroll up to the title of the motion? Okay, motion to amend the Planning and Zoning Resolution 2025-903 with the conditions set forth within, I think there were conditions in there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Within the resolution amending the hours of operation to not exceed 10 p.m. Did I say that right?
That can work.
Thank you, sir.
So Lisa has put forth a motion to amend the motion to have the hours of operation end at 10 p.m. So is there a second to that motion? Seeing no second, that motion to amend fails, so the resolution is still, or the current motion is at 11 PM. So, sorry, Lisa, about that, but you still have the floor. I think you had other points to talk about. Is that correct?
No, that was my key point, is concern for mainly the residents, but as I don't think that was Mark that spoke for that moment. You know, any existing businesses that go in there, it could be potentially problematic with those hours of operation. So I thought that was a nice add. Thank you. I don't have anything else.
Thank you, Lisa. I guess I would maybe mention is the way we have this written is that they'll be coming back in approximately a year, and that could be a very good thing to bring up then, so.
Yeah, if the hours are proving to be an issue, they could be adjusted during that period.
Mhm. Thank you. Any continued discussion? I guess one thing that I want to bring up that I was a little bit concerned, and I maybe ask it as a procedural thing, is how does this work? Because I see there's a plan to serve alcohol, and I'm assuming that's not really anything we approve, that ends up getting approved by what, the public safety or something like that?
Yeah, there's a alcohol license that they will have to apply for and receive to be able to serve alcohol here. I suppose we're, the commission is somewhat artificially limiting the hours at which they can serve alcohol. That's not unprecedented. Pin Seekers has a similar limit. But the ability to serve liquor or not will be determined by I think by the village board. It's part of an alcohol license.
Okay, thank you. I guess myself, I'm a little bit concerned just because of the length of the dead end and how long it will take for emergency services or police to get there if there was an issue. But again, I don't think that's necessarily our purview as a committee. So I hope that the public safeties or the village board will take that under consideration.
Yeah, I think it requires a recommendation from Public Safety Committee or the police, and advised by the police and fire.
Okay, so thank you. So what we have in front of us right now is a motion to approve the resolution as presented, not what's in our packet, but with the few revisions that were presented tonight. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Oh, we have a
I have a
wave by
hand.
Lisa. Yep.
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
I couldn't click the hand raise for you know, for that quick second. I just wanted to point out Kiva Sports Center online indicates hours of operation closes at 10 p.m.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa.
Can I?
Just a second. Go ahead, Jean.
Yeah, what we asked them to do though was to stagger times for their games. So we're kind of impacting how they're going to run their business, because we were asking them to stagger the games in order then to avoid traffic impacts or parking impacts. And that's, I think that the may be done by 11 o'clock, I think is a reasonable compromise in regards to that. And like what you said, they will come back for discussion, and we can revisit that then too, evaluate it.
And one thing that I think about is how many times I've run into Menards with 5 minutes left and I don't leave until after 9 or 10 that I'm supposed to, and I don't want to be getting people in trouble that way. Yeah. Not with the 2 minutes that I had before the meeting started. Yeah. Well, thank you. So again, we have the motion on the floor. I won't repeat it, but we were getting close to approve, or I will ask all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 5-1. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 5.7. I should again thank you and good luck. Items number 5.7 is discussion on a conceptual development plan for a mixed residential commercial use redevelopment project at the southwest corner of Main and North Street. Alex, I'm assuming this is you.
I'll just lead it off and let our applicant settle in over there. So this is a conceptual plan for a new project, redevelopment project at the southwest corner of North and Main Street. Until recently occupied by a liquor store, a little bit before that, a car wash to its south, and potentially extending west to older multiple family property. This site is identified for redevelopment in Village's comprehensive plan and its redevelopment plan. If it moves forward, the next step will be a rezoning and a preliminary development plan for a plan unit development, which we have scheduled for public hearing at the present time at the February meeting. There is a minor amendment to the plan unit development ordinance that would facilitate this and other redevelopment projects that I can talk more about when we get to that agenda item. I think I'll turn it to Alex.
Yeah, so given that we're an hour and a half in, let's just do a short presentation here just to kind of give an overview. As Mark said, this is a prelude to hopefully the February meeting where we'll have more in-depth conversation about the PDP and a rezoning. But just kind of wanted to give some context and background on the project itself before we look at a potential ordinance amendment. So the CDA is the developer that is doing the site. Obviously, we've been in the community for a long time. However, as a CDA, Community Development Authority, and just for everybody's awareness, Doug sits on the CDA board. We were created in 2020. Prior to that point, it was the DeForest Housing Authority, which to the best of my knowledge, and Doug may be able to speak to that a little better, has been operating housing in DeForest. I think it's probably closer to 40 years, but I conservatively put 30 on there. So obviously a staple in the community. Our current projects that we own are and operate are Jefferson Square, which is the image in the background of this slide. It's a 62 unit condo development that is on DeForest Street and Jefferson Court. It's a 55 and up community, and as it's noted there, it's consistently voted or at least nominated for best of senior living in the DeForest Windsor area. We also own and operate what was formerly public housing in the village, 36 units, 32 unit building, and then 2 duplexes as well. So one of the larger providers of affordable housing in DeForest as well. Little snippet from one of our residents at Jefferson Square. I guess if you see in the last comment there behind the AI assistant that she's going to be there until she can't be there anymore. So thanks, Joni. The team itself, we manage our own properties. We had a staff of 2. We recently contracted out for management services at Jefferson Square. That's been going really well, but we do manage our affordable housing portfolio internally. Asset management, obviously we're owners of all of our facilities, good stewards of the buildings that we operate for obviously a long term as well. And then now stepping into the planning and development role. That is our property manager, Jay Millen, just for a little context there as well. So the PDP proposal, this slide is slightly outdated. We've tentatively named it the Headwaters. I have since been outvoted. That was my baby name, and now it will be called Yahara Crossing, I believe. So I like the Headwaters, but I know.
I like the Headwaters.
I did too. So, well, I won't go into there. It's done. What's done is done. So this is a mixed-use residential commercial development. Again, as Mark mentioned, on the corner of Main and V. I'm sure you're all fairly familiar with the site itself. The redevelopment plan, as Mark mentioned, also envisions a gateway building. We'll get into more of the details of this in the PDP submission in February, but just to provide an idea of what we're looking at, this is a concept that has limited retail or commercial space, roughly 4,500 square feet on the north side of the building, an outdoor patio to potentially accommodate that commercial space as well, parking along V to facilitate the commercial primarily there, as well as parking on the southwest corner of the site. The building itself will be 60 residential units. It will have under-building parking. One of the nice things, I think, and again, we'll talk more about this at the PDP, that this achieves here is a consolidation of some of the various access points that are on here. You can see there's 4 currently, streamlining that to 2. We're hoping to improve some of the traffic flow. From a massing standpoint, this will be a 3-story building. This is, again, we'll talk about this at the PDP. The thought is to have direct access townhomes on Main Street, along Main Street, to sort of keep with some of the residential properties that are to the east of there. That will have a that will have a central corridor as well. So there'll be access in building as well. Again, under building parking, the retail patio, and then we're going to be employing some step backs on the 3rd floor just to reduce sort of the imposing nature of the building. So we've enlisted Kaler Slater for design services as part of this project, and they've been really great to work with so far. They've been extremely fast. They conducted, so I don't want to speak for their work here, but I will anyway. They've conducted a preliminary material study, pulling from some buildings in the community as what they deem to be, quality design and elements that they could pull from. Personally, I really liked the fact that they pulled from these buildings because they are public buildings, Village Hall and the library. And this is obviously a public entity that's undertaking this project. So I think our public sphere does really nicely designed projects. The other building that they referenced here is the train depot, which I thought was an interesting choice too. Obviously one of our historical buildings. Yeah, yep, exactly. And then from a precedent study, not buildings within the community, obviously, but just to give a couple examples of different approaches of how this building might be configured. One of the things, the feature of this one, I think that we sort of discussed was some of the direct townhome access, not necessarily the shark teeth of these roof lines, as well as the strategy of the 3rd floor step back here to reduce some of the imposing nature of things. There were some material elements, sort of a corner feature there as well, and then the thought of a roof line kind of holding the corner as well with different lighting schemes. So again, we'll get into all of this in more detail in February, but just wanted to give you a little bit of a preview to that and set the stage for another item tonight.
Thank you. Any comments, discussions? Go ahead, Jean.
Yeah. Can I go back and see that conceptual plan, please? When I saw this in the packet, I was thrilled beyond words. I've lived here a long time. This looks really nice. I understand that this is a conceptual. I wish you look in everything that happens here. This corner will really make a difference. On a side note too, I like that you're removing 4 conflict points, those access points, and just making one way in and one way out, and that it's far enough away from that intersection of Main and V. That's important because traffic will back up, traffic backs up on North Street. I was really, really happy to see this. This looks great. Thank you.
Great, thanks for the feedback. Yeah, I know our PD has already offered comments about, especially on V, the access point there in proximity to the intersection, so.
Every one of those driveways is a conflict point, and so when you get rid of those, things just move so much better.
Sure.
It's safer. So,
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jean. I thought that was going to be your number 1, but Very
I'm
good.
so excited about it.
I got some comments but Lisa, I do not see you on screen, so I apologize if your hand's up, but I'll give you the opportunity. Okay.
I'm good, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm following along on PDF. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? I guess a couple comments that I'll make is I do like some of those, say, example buildings that you have. I question a little bit as far as how you commented about setting back the third floor. I'm not necessarily opposed to having it, say, not set back, but I leave that up to the whatever architects or the experts in that. I do, like Gene, really like it. I like how you have like a patio up at the corner. So it's not so like imposing on the actual intersection itself, but that patio being there, I'm assuming it would be fenced or whatever, maybe bushes or whatever. It will serve a purpose of actually making that more of a Main Street feel. So I think that's pretty awesome. The one thing that I do want to bring up that I think is going to be a challenge that I'm hoping you put this into your cost, but there's a rather large pole right on that property line. And I know back, say like 2002, I had to move one of those poles for a highway project and that was 100,000. And that didn't have any guidelines, so I'm hoping you talk to the utilities because I'm just estimating it's gotta be a $300,000 pole or better.
Yeah, I think you're right in the neighborhood. So at this point, it's unclear whether we're even gonna have the ability to move it or whether we're gonna have to design around it. But certainly if we can accommodate it in the costs, we'll try to do that. I think that will make a better project, but it's not cheap.
Yep. And I do have, say, ideas. I'm sure you have some too, how we can design around it, but it just wouldn't be a building that can span the property line, so.
Sure.
I think it's beautiful. I think it'll be a great concept, and if that pole becomes a problem, I hope we still continue the project and work around it.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? I think this was just up for discussion, correct? So I think that's it for 5.7, right? So public hearing on an ordinance amendment to the Village Zoning Code, Chapter 15, to remove the minimum land area requirement for plan unit development in designated redevelopment project areas. I open that public hearing at 7:32.
Sure, I'll speak now. So Alex, as he went through this proposal, notice we have a provision in our zoning ordinance, the PUD section, that says PUDs can't be any less than 3 acres in area. The site that he just brought forward is less than 3 acres. And I brought this map up. This is the redevelopment plan map from the adopted DeForest redevelopment plan. And you can see this is site 8 that Alex just presented on. And if that's not 3 acres, and you can see so many other redevelopment sites within the downtown redevelopment plan that are also less than 3 acres. And also plan unit development zoning is a useful tool for downtown redevelopment. We got odd shaped lots. We got mixture of uses in redevelopment projects. Setbacks can be an issue. Pre-existing conditions like poles and other things can be an issue. So having the ability to use plan unit development zoning for the downtown redevelopment is important. We're suggesting that within the redevelopment areas identified in the village's plan like this one, that 3 acre limit would not be a limit anymore. And that's the essence of the ordinance amendment that's in your packet.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, I ask, is there anybody online wishing to speak for the public hearing? Don't see anybody in the audience. So I'm going to close the public hearing at 7:34. I guess that's it. So that must be taken, that public hearing is going to be taken up under 5.9. Is that correct? Discussion. Yep. Discussion and recommendation on ordinance amending the village zoning code, chapter 15, to remove the minimum land area requirement for planned unit development in designated relative redevelopment project areas. So I guess they're open for.
This would be a recommendation to the village board.
Yep, and we have a draft ordinance that it would get a number once it goes to village board. I guess I'm a little bit confused, and if I could ask for some clarity, because that public hearing was about a specific item in this ordinance, right? And this is more, it's the whole
No,
chapter 15.
pan down, Randy. This is it. So this ordinance is one page. It would maintain a 3-acre minimum except within a village designated redevelopment project area.
Okay. Thank you for
That's the only thing
clarifying.
this ordinance does.
Yep. Okay, I was confused based on everything else that comes after this. so.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do have the resolution or a draft ordinance, and we're looking for a motion or continued discussion on a recommendation to the village board. I guess I will make a recommendation, or I will make a motion that we recommend the draft ordinance, the 2025 dash whatever, as written to the village board. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Shannon. Is there any discussion? I've got one question. I'm not necessarily opposed to the ordinance, but I'm curious why PUD zoning? I'm trying to remember all of our zoning. I think there was it RMB or something? Or
Yeah, that district probably has a setback problem for this property. The B1 zoning district, which is our downtown district, doesn't allow any first floor residential use currently, and that he talked about those townhouse concepts. And our multiple family zoning district doesn't allow any commercial use. So we're kind of caught in the middle with this proposal right now.
Which,
Okay.
you know, is part of the reason, I mean, those types of things are why people go to PUDs. I will say too, with the one with first floor residential, I mean, those are also things that could be potentially considered because RMB could have been a decent district for this. So if we continue to get redevelopment projects coming forth, we may want to look at those ordinances to look at some of those different things. But in this instance, there just wasn't a district that fit for standard reasons.
Okay. I am just generally look for reasons to not use PUD.
Right. No, I hear you, Jim.
And sometimes I'd rather amend the zoning code for a condition or a regular zoning rather than modifying PUD, but I can be fine. Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Item 5. I see what happened. Okay. Item 5.10. Discussion and recommendation on an ordinance to repeal and recreate village subdivision and development regulations, chapter 13, and to consolidate impact fee regulations within chapter 13.
If I could just say, I think in the packet, I just noticed this before the meeting, that the site plan materials actually appear first and the subdivision ordinance appears second in your big packet. So sorry about that, but It's listed subdivision ordinance, then site plan in the agenda. The packet materials have it in the opposite order. It's not a problem if you don't want it to be a problem, but I just wanted to point it out.
Yeah, I just, thank you for pointing that out because it makes my notes make more sense. So discussion. Anybody?
So we should be. So this one, the ordinance is really not much of the story. It's really a cover for the exhibit, which is the full subdivision ordinance with the crossouts and underlines that would show how it would change. Yes, that exhibit. And I just report that this item was initially on your agenda in December. You postponed action on it, understandably. It was also on the Public Services Committee agenda last night. That committee recommended the board, that the village board approve it subject to 2 minor changes, which I can describe tonight. The item did require a public hearing. The way the statute is written on the state statute, those hearings on subdivision ordinances have to be before the village board. The village board held a hearing in December. No one spoke at the hearing. So the steps now are for you all to review this, offer a recommendation to the village board for potential adoption if you feel you're ready to do that tonight.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, concerns? Thing? You have something, Jean? Yeah.
Yeah, I spent half of my professional career reviewing land divisions and subdivisions. I appreciate everything that you guys have done with this and the reviews, and I think that they make sense to make it to make us have a better product when subdivision conceptual plans come in. So I fully support what you guys have presented here. It's a good document. So thank you.
You're welcome. It's a document, and I had maybe a better presentation last night when we weren't so burned out. But the changes will neither promote more subdivision development nor less subdivision development. They help us catch up to best practices in reviewing subdivision development, and cover different topical areas that are bulleted out in the memo that is in your packet, but detailed in the more expansive ordinance. This being said, 95% of the words in the ordinance are not proposed for change, but we felt it was important, and there were enough changes on most every page of the ordinance that we thought including the whole 60-page document would be helpful for context. But I am very happy to answer any specific questions or go to detail on the whys of any of these changes if you would like me to.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I think I'm not seeing a whole lot of discussion, so if we, maybe rather than going through the whole document, I've got just maybe a half a dozen items that I think are quick.
Yeah, you should go to Exhibit A.
So in the definitions, 1303-23.
Want me to navigate now, Brandy? All right.
Oh, this is actually mature trees. So this is something I pretty much comment on all the time, that I don't think maple trees should be considered a nuisance tree. And because they're considered a nuisance tree, they're not being counted as mature trees, the way this is written, is the way I interpret it. So this is again, just another instance where I wanna try to get maple trees off the nuisance tree list.
You know, that's a good point, Jim, because we have woods that are, you know, woods that are dominated by maple trees. And I think most people would consider those, you know, worth preserving. And that's a little different than saying that we don't want to plant more maples in the village. So,
Either remove them or add some
we
additional
could
text.
work on the definition to make sure that it doesn't inadvertently allow someone to bulldoze a 3-acre maple forest because of some loophole.
Right. And I guess I should qualify too, I'm probably okay with silver maples, but not other maples. But I like silver maples too. And that goes for the mature tree and the mature woodland.
Right.
One thing that I wanted to be cognizant of is on the number 33, or sorry, 33. That was a discussion that happened last night about the usable land.
Mm-hmm.
There was one change, I don't know if that's Shane, oh, I think that was in D, wasn't it?
Yeah, so this version doesn't have the change, but Jim, the committee last night added this unless otherwise approved by the Director of Public Services to D as well. So normally we require 15% of the perimeter of parkland to be fronting on a public road. You can speak to it more eloquently than me, but there may be instances where it makes sense to allow less. And so the committee last night suggested that those blue words that you see in B also be included at the end of D.
And I would add, there was some discussion mainly from myself that I feel 2% is rather restrictive for in the B, and even 12, or I think more of 4 and 25, but in the end, we didn't recommend any changes in that. But that could be continued discussion, and I didn't bring it too much further because there is the otherwise. So, sorry. And there was discussion, it shows up there under 33, but it was actually in other locations too in the subdivision ordinance, where the Director of Public Services is specifically noted rather than, see there, it used to say Parks, Recs, and Natural Resources Committee. Now the term would be Public Services Committee. But at least one committee member brought up that as why is the committee sort of taken out and say specifically to the director. So I think that will likely be a continuing discussion when it goes to village board, I'm guessing. So if we want to weigh in on that, I guess we can do that as a committee, but I will move on to my next comment. It's 1309 I have written down. Yep, 1309. And you listed or mentioned another village, land division approval authority. And I was just questioning what that is.
In some cases, the Planning and Zoning Commission is the approval authority for plats, or for, not for plats, but for certified survey maps. So in those cases, then the Planning and Zoning Commission could grant the waiver. It wouldn't have to go up to the village board if the certified survey map didn't have to go up to the village board.
Okay.
Similarly, or not similarly, there are very limited instances where Brandy, as the zoning administrator, can approve CSMs for, like, for a 0 lot line is the most common example, or a lot consolidation is another one. In that case, she would have the ability under this provision to grant a waiver or modification for only those limited cases.
Okay, I guess I'm good the way it's written. I just wanted to understand more and see if we could actually clarify what that is.
You know, as you're assembling your recommendations tonight, don't feel you have to craft the exact language. If you tell me kind of generally what you want to do, I'll make sure that that gets to the village board version with the, you know, the best language. But if you're telling me, can we clarify 1309 so another village land division approval authority is more clear, I can certainly do that.
Yep. And I guess I'm bringing these things up as points, and I don't know necessarily what we want to do as a committee, but at least Mark knows what I'm thinking. So I'm guessing you can
Yeah.
draft things.
Well,
between
you know, someone can make a motion to incorporate Jim's changes. And
Let's see.
then we could do, I mean, it could be that straight, simple tonight. So, but we'll see how bad they get first.
Maybe I'll star ones that, so 1330, and I said parentheses 2. All I wrote is all subdivisions. I think I was just concerned with that term. 1332.
Oh, 2. Preliminary patch.
Yeah, so it's requiring a preliminary plat on all subdivisions. I'm just concerned with the term all subdivisions. Do we want to actually require a preliminary plat? Because I think up in the definition, subdivisions include CSMs and things too.
No, that's a land division.
Okay.
A subdivision is the 5+ lot dealio.
Okay, so then probably okay.
I think the language is fine.
Okay.
I understand why you thought it wasn't, but if it said a preliminary plat shall be required for all land divisions, that would have been a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
The next one I went to was 1331. It's like a 5 or an S. I can't tell my own handwriting.
Probably 5. Tree protection.
1331. I don't know, I just wrote down setbacks. Oh, it was the things that we needed to include on a plat.
Oh, it might have been S then.
Yes.
There you go.
Yep, there.
Sorry.
I was just concerned with setbacks. I don't want to get carried away with that because I personally don't believe setbacks should be, say, like zoning setbacks. I don't want to have included on a plat.
Agreed.
I can be okay with setbacks as from like a wetland, but I'm cautious of just seeing the word setbacks.
Special restrictions required by the relating to setbacks. So these are only cases where it's not something that's a zoning standard zoning ordinance setback, but something that's unique, like a 75-foot setback from a wetland that isn't necessarily intuitive or written in a code. So this is
I
not.
can appreciate that just as long as that's what we do in practice, because I know of other municipalities that actually put their building setbacks on every lot. And I don't personally think that's appropriate.
Jim, I can make that clearer.
Okay. So,
Jim, I just
Yep,
want to
go ahead.
note that Lisa has her hand raised, so
thank
we
you.
can continue on, but just wanted to point it out.
Thank you, Brandy.
Lisa, do you have a comment on that? I have 3 more
Oh,
things, but I'll go ahead.
No, you go ahead. It's all you, Jim. That's okay. I'll wait.
So 1340, 3A. I can tell you, 1340, 3A.
Yep.
Nope. So it's the widths of streets, so,
Oh, 3. I was on 2A, my bad.
yep, so scroll down. I particularly think the minor street, the minimum width should be 60 rather than 66 feet right away. But I suppose that's controversial because I brought that up multiple times. I can tell you 10 or 15 years ago, that was 60 feet because I remember when it got changed to 66. I don't know what the DOT manual says, but.
you're right, Jim. It was a debate that probably spent more time on it than it needed, but I think the reason it's 66 feet is for utilities and utility placements within terrace areas and the conflicts that we have with utilities and street trees and other things that want to be in the right of way. We do have, you know, I know you'd prefer it to be right in front and center, but we do have the village board has the ability to approve. These are narrow street widths, I should say, but in plan unit developments, and we have a number of 60 foot rights of way.
Right, I just don't want that to be a reason that somebody goes to PUD just to have a narrower right.
Yeah, make a recommendation. The world can change.
This is a bit of a comment, so on 1342, I specifically noted corner lots, but it maybe applies to the whole thing, the 1342. So I know there's times where the configuration of the lot makes it challenging to put a building on there, so we've requested that people demonstrate that a building will actually fit.
Yeah.
And that happens often on a corner lot.
Right.
But again, maybe not necessarily a corner, really could be anything. So I don't know if we want to have that written in stone or something that could be requested. See what
So,
I'm getting at?
yeah, where we had that most recently was in the Bueller Farm plat where they did not have an extra width of 10 feet on the corner lots. And we asked them to show that they can fit a house without that. The reason we have the extra width is you have basically 2 front setbacks on a corner lot, which squeezes the building area a little bit. So the waiver prompted the need for that provision, but you know, my hope is that we have our setbacks and our lot sizes are calibrated enough that people can build houses on each lot that are, you know, marketable.
I just know when I used to do this, whatever the 15 years ago, there was times where you get like a pie shaped type lot as you're say rounding a corner, and that gets pretty tight where we've had to demonstrate in other municipalities that we had a standard building footprint that would actually fit.
So, I mean, this is vague language, but it says right now, the lot shall be designed to provide an aesthetically pleasing building site and a proper architectural setting for the buildings contemplated. So, you know, I would argue if we had a weird shaped lot, we have a mechanism under 1 to say, show us that you can build on it.
Okay. I just want to make sure we have that authority to ask for that.
Yeah. We can make that, again, Jim, we can make that explicit too.
And the last one I have written down is a 1345.
Yes. Which number?
Really, it's sort of like the end of it, just the required improvements. So this is one thing that I've always, so like, I lived on Acre Parkway and backed up to Western Green. And I think an issue is that a lot of people would start encroaching their yards on it, and then they lose track of, some people lose track of where their yards are. Some know where they are and they still put their batting cage into the park or trampoline or whatever. But my thought is when subdivisions come in, and I've seen this done in other communities, that you actually mark the pole with, say, maybe a flexible tube that says like conservancy or park or something like that. And I think if we had those marked as a public improvement needed as a subdivision comes in, then we'd have our parks better defined and hopefully less people encroaching their yard into our public areas.
So that would be part of the public improvements that the developer would be required to install as boundaries around parks.
Yeah.
Physical markers showing the boundaries of parks.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it could be any of a number of things. It could be rocks.
Could be, and I just bring up another example like Conservancy Place. I know there's areas where the trail act goes outside of the park and we had to buy easements from the Ring brothers because of that. And I just feel if when we got that parkland or conservancy, if they were marked, that would have been less likely to happen. So I offer that as a suggestion.
So are all those gyms packaged sort of, if we're thinking about a motion?
3, 4, 5. I got 6 stars.
Okay.
So Lisa, you had discussion?
I just had a question and thank you, Jim, for bringing all of that up. Those were some really great points and some things I didn't even think about because obviously I don't have the same expertise as you have. But you had, Jim had pointed out 1309. And the first time I read this through, and apologies because it was probably like the third hour of reading this 300+ page document, right? On 13.9, Mark, I was curious, the way that's written presently, and it could just be because I'm tired. 1309, the waivers and modifications, is that basically loosely removing the board, the village board, the pass through to the village board and providing more authority to
Yeah, if I'm anticipating your question, with the changes that are being proposed, would provide more authority to the Planning and Zoning Commission to grant a waiver or modification if the certified survey map stopped with the Planning and Zoning Commission. The way it's currently written, without the changes, we could have a certified survey map approval that otherwise would stop at the Planning and Zoning Commission, but a waiver associated with that Planning and Zoning Commission approved CSM would have to be approved by the village board.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you, Lisa. So I think we're at, was there a draft ordinance, if I remember right, or resolution?
You could, I mean, you could recommend Exhibit A to the draft ordinance with Jim's changes, and that would be a plenty fine motion.
Okay. So I apologize for this, but I think I'll make a motion. I'll make the motion to recommend to the village board the draft ordinance, I think you said, right, Mark? And the 6 clarifications or modifications that was discussed tonight with my input, I'll say, and Mark and anybody else that commented. And I'll do this, Mark. I don't know if you want to write this down if you haven't, but I've noted is the mature trees and 1303.
Yep.
1309 is potential clarification.
Yep.
1331.
This is the setbacks issue.
Yep.
Yep.
1340.
is it 1340?
Yeah.
Which one was that?
Well, that was the 66 feet, the 6th.
13.42. Yeah. But 13.42.
Yeah, that one we weren't gonna do, sorry.
13.42, I think, is your next one with the 60 feet. Are you including that?
No, I am not including that.
Okay.
That we can discuss again at the village board or something if need.
All right.
I was including the 1342, the potential clarification on requiring, I guess, we said that was gonna be okay, so let's not include that.
Yeah, I've confused everyone here. 13.42.
Was where I brought up about corner
Oh.
lots and stuff.
Yeah, if you're good with that, I think we've got the tools to require that stuff as is.
Yep, so not 1342. But I did want to include something in 1345 that was about monumenting or marking the perimeter of the parks.
Yep. So the changes to 1307, 1309, 13.315, and 13.45.
4 changes.
Yep.
I think it was actually 1303 though, not, was the first one, I think.
Oh, 1303, thank you.
Yep.
That's mature trees. Yep. 1303, the changes to 1303 related to mature trees. Changes to 1309 to clarify,
Land Division Approval Authority.
yeah, Land Division Approval Authority to 13.315 to make it clear that zoning setbacks shouldn't be on plats and CSMs. And to change to 13.45 to require physical markers, park boundaries with developer improvements on plats.
Yep, thank you.
Or, yeah.
Yep, so 4 changes as denoted. That is my motion, and I think we are still waiting for a second. Yep,
I'll second you.
thank you for that long discussion. Thank you, Shannon. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. I think we're still at. Back to the agenda. I think we are on 511, discussion and recommendation on an ordinance amending the village zoning code, chapter 15, pertaining to site and building plan submittal and review procedures.
This item was on your December agenda. There was a public hearing that was open and closed. You postponed action. In summary, this would reorient the site plans requiring staff approval versus site plans requiring planning and zoning commission approval approach. Kind of redefining where that line is, and specifying a process whereby if if a project was classified for staff approval and they were aggrieved by that, they could still come to P&Z on appeal. That's a summary of what's proposed. We've also fleshed out and detailed out what ought to be included on a site plan submittal to make it complete, which I think will help everyone along with some less than complete submittals that we get. I think I'm going to leave it at that for now, and again, be available to talk about questions and comments on what you have for potential changes.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Any discussion, motion?
Make a motion to, are we recommending this to the village board or?
Yep.
This is a recommendation, yeah.
Okay, so I'll make a recommendation to, for ordinance 2025. And of course, there's no number associated as written.
Thank you, Jean. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Shannon. Thank you. Continued discussion. Seeing none, I'm gonna just mention a couple things. I still have some concerns, namely with My concern is just, again, I had been on the developer side and I worry about extending some of the review times. But I don't have a good grasp of that, and I hope to talk to staff between now and the village board to better understand the restraints. So I don't want to make any recommendations now. I want to, again, understand more, and we can talk about it at the village board too.
Sure. I'll be real brief. For minor site plans, there's really no change. We just changed it from 20 business days to 30 days, which is essentially the same thing. For major site plans, we're proposing to extend it from 60 to 90, I believe, or I can't remember the exact difference.
That was one that I read.
45. And that is an effort to, especially for these major site plans, to allow time for some back and forth between staff and the developer. We've instituted kind of by policy a 6-week submittal timeframe before planning and zoning commission meetings. It's been helpful. We've been able to have proposals that are more fully baked before the commission as a result. So short answer, I think, is that that's based on our experience, and it just seems to work best for everyone.
I'll just add to that 90-day, I think was the duration in which you have to take action, I think, on the site plan. So, but in practice, that 45-day submission is the change. And in practice, most cases, action is taken before that 90 days anyway. Closer to that 45-day, essentially right after a meeting that it's reviewed at.
Yeah, and the one that I'll talk about a little bit is that the 60 changing the 90, because again, I remember back in the days when I was helping developers, it's nice to have that 60. And pretty often, if we weren't going to make the 60, it was requested to extend it 30 days, and it generally wasn't an issue. So I can see where it could go either way, but
yeah,
I didn't know if there's any I mean, it's not a state statutes. I think it might be with subdivisions, but definitely not with site plans or whatever it was.
That's correct. There is no requirement except one that we might impose on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think part of the idea of extending it to 90 days from 60 is because we're actually extending the initial review time or whatever to 45 days, right? So 45 to 60 days, that allows 15 days for things to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So adding on the extra time, it allows us to bring a more completed package to you when it's ready.
I think based on my experience, we'll get a better end result. We'll get a better product where we can have conversations back and forth, not we, where you can have conversations back and forth with the village and the developer to present a better product in the end. The extended time.
I think I might have mentioned this the last time too. So yes, I can see the developer side that they don't want that extension and that additional time built into there. But it also, from my perspective, and I think from staff perspective too, eliminates a degree of risk, because we get to a point where if we have an incomplete submittal and we're going back and forth and we're getting to a point where we need to put together packing materials or at least have something, and we have to say, sorry, it's not complete, we got to kick you off that meeting. That's a bit of risk for them then. So the whole thought here is with extending the submission timeline is just to make sure people have stuff dialed in and we have that additional window to make sure they get it dialed in.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Jean.
So what's happening is you're dealing with many different factors. You're dealing with traffic, stormwater, and DOT and DNR and whoever else, and that will just give more time to have a better.
And I can tell you as the developer side, often when you're starting to run up against the 60 windows, the recommendation likely would have been to deny because we didn't have enough time. So that's often why it gets extended, because you don't want a denial. So
I think it's driven by this desire to get plans well in advance, so we have back and forth time with the applicants. And so I'm catching my breath. the ordinance would require submittals at least 45 days in advance of a P and Z meeting. Those are days that we should be spending going going back and forth and cleaning things up. And if we like that 40-day, 5-day submittal deadline, having an action within 60 days can be tight depending on the P and Z schedule.
Thank you. And so there is one thing I do want to talk about. I wrote down as item 3, or sorry, on page 3 is what I wrote. I think it's 3. Yeah, there. So item 3 on page 3.
I got it.
I'm a little bit concerned because some of the building expansions that are shown on site plans are rather large. I don't know, like one example that I can think of recent is like the Quick Trip, their distribution center, they showed an expansion to the south.
Yeah.
And that would be a pretty major undertaking because that would be removing parking lot. But I think the way this is written, they showed it, so it would just.
It would become a minor site plan that would be a staff approval. That's a correct interpretation, Jim.
So do we want to have a square footage limit on the expansion? Say similar to 1 or?
You wanted to?
Anybody else share that concern?
Maybe 15%. Carry that term. Because, if the building itself, and we've got some pretty massive buildings down to Forest, if the building is 300,000 square feet, which is like Bell Labs, and you're adding 50,000 square feet on it, it may not seem too big, but if you add 50,000 square feet to a 50,000 square foot building, it's awful big. So having it maybe be, a percentage of the original building size could account for that.
And the other example that comes to my mind is potentially on Youngblood site, they have a smaller 5,000 square foot future building that was proposed too, which is a smaller one. Would that be something that would be suitable for site or a staff review? Or I'm wondering if square footage is the delineating factor there.
If that were in a standard zoning district, first of all, don't worry about that one because that's in a planning and development that will come to P and Z regardless of what we do here, because the planning and development is written up so that all site plans have to be approved by P and Z. But yeah, I mean, if that were outside of a planning and development, this number 3 as written would say you got your pass at P and Z because you showed the dashed in boundary. You can now go to staff only to get your second site plan approved.
Maybe I'll do this for interest of time because we have, I think Jeannie, you were the motioner and Shan was a second. So I'll offer as a friendly the add in 15%. If you're willing to accept that or not.
I'll accept it.
Yep.
Okay. So if you could add up to 15% of the existing building or however you want to word it.
So if as long as the addition that's dashed in is less than 15% of the original building, then staff can approve the addition. But if it goes over 15%, then it has to.
Then it becomes major or whatever.
I get it.
And then the other comments that I wanted to bring up are, again, under this, to me, it makes a difference. So I don't know, again, what the other commissioners think. What if it's like along an arterial or a collector road where it's something more visual? Is that something that we want to come here regardless? And another sort of caveat too, what if it's like directly adjacent to a different zoning district? I don't know if we've accomplished that. Say if it's an industrial or a business building directly adjacent to a residential. Is that something that we want to come here so we can So you look at that transition.
So am I correct in thinking that in these staff reviews to P and Z, the commission would still be invited for comment or?
No, we would create a more starker line between that. And the reason that, for that is several. One, some of you have commented that you're not really sure what you're looking at or why when we ship site plans to you, because there's no analysis along with it, because we're so early in the process, we can't prepare one. Second reason, and we appreciate your time, whether you get nominally paid here or not, but we know you don't get paid when you're looking at your email at 11:30 at night. So we're trying to take that out of your hands. And the third reason is more of a legal reason. If say Brandy is officially the staff that approves, if she approves a site plan and someone's aggrieved by it, and you've been involved in the initial review, but you're also the appeal body, that gets awful, confusing and creates a potential conflict situation. So part of the proposal here is minor site plans. Brandy will report to you, at the next meeting. I've approved a site plan for blah, 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 dry cleaner at the corner of X and Y because it met the criteria for minor. You'll have the ability to say, oh, that sounds good, Brandy, or Brandy, next time you do that, could you look a little more closely at, pedestrian connections or something like that? So, we can continue to learn. But that would be the extent of your involvement unless someone appealed Brandy's decision on that dry cleaner to you.
Right, and the other thing we discussed in the past too is that we want things to be very clear that there was no fuzzy line.
Right.
And I think I'd heard from you and Mark or Brandy just how sometimes you had a choice if it was minor or major, and we wanted to have that line drawn.
Yeah. And the default, especially when things are a little hot, the default is, I don't want to approve anything. You guys handle it. You guys handle it. So I'm not trying to pick.
No,
on
it's
Brandy,
true though.
But,
Mhm.
so this would be a little bit more, no, you're in this category. You are staff approval. You meet our ordinances, you're in.
Mhm. And that's where I bring up these two things.
Yeah.
Where being on an arterial or collector road is going to be a lot more visual to the public.
Mhm.
So that would maybe take Brandy a bit out of the hot seat if it's on us to then take public comment, or I guess the site plan review.
Front on designated arterial or collector, which we do have. That's an objective thing that we can determine.
Yep. And then
And-
another thought that I brought up is if you're directly adjacent to a different zoning district.
Yeah, that one's a little harder because what if it's a B3 district next to a B2 district? They're both commercial districts, it's who we trying to protect. So maybe it would be, well, now we have to kind of grade intensity,
That's why I bring that up.
That's a harder one to judge, Jim. I would just say than it's on an arterial or collector.
Mhm.
We have either way. I mean, we have buffer yard standards, we have fencing standards, we have other things that are designed to protect less intense zoning districts from more intense districts. So regardless of whether those site plans are approved by the commission or approved by staff, we have the tools in place to protect neighbors, so to speak.
Okay. So I guess similar to last time, I'll ask for a friendly amendment to include, I'm sorry, I don't know what number it would be, but if it's along, if the site is on an arterial or collector road, that it would be
Major.
a major.
Yep. So there's frontage. The site has frontage on an arterial or collector.
Yep. Gene, is that something you would
Can
do?
you say that again?
So I'm looking, can you scroll down, Mark?
Yep.
We have these conditions of why it goes a major. So I think it'd be a number 6 unless the number 6 is on.
Yeah.
the-
This is framed a little bit in the reverse. It basically says these are all the things that are minor. So we would say the property does not front on an arterial or collector street if we were to put it in this list.
Yep. Does that
And
make
it's a
sense?
minor.
Yep, it does. I
Okay.
will.
And you're accepting the friendly?
Yes, I will.
Shannon, do you accept it too? Thank you. That's all the things I wanted to discuss. Anybody else? So we have a motion on the floor. I don't remember, there was a recommendation to the village board with a draft ordinance. And now there was 2 changes to what qualifies as a minor.
Correct.
So that's the motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
And there's no presentations, discussions. Any other business that lawfully comes before the Village of DeForest Planning and Zoning Commission? I'd say I apologize, I don't have a chair's report prepared. I will do that the next meeting. Do know that do know that Thursday night you can come and give us your opinions on fluoride, and it will be back to the village board for a potential, I can't, my fingers crossed, a potential vote. That's the big thing right now, so. Staff report?
I got nothing.
Site plan approvals, CSM approvals, development process and enforcement suggestions. Next meeting is February 25th. Jean, did I hear you say something?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 8:27. Thank you.